Welcome back. In the previous episode, we talked about classical conditioning, which is how animals learn through associations. Today, we're going to talk about another major learning process that shapes how horses learn from us. Operant conditioning describes how behavior changes depending on what happens after the behavior occurs. In simple terms, behaviors that lead to something meaningful tend to increase, while behaviors that lead to something unpleasant tend to decrease. This process is happening constantly in training, whether we are aware of it or not. Operant conditioning is commonly explained through 4 possible outcomes that can follow a behavior. These are sometimes called the 4 quadrants of learning. The words can sound very complicated at first, but they are quite simple once we break them down. The words positive and negative do not mean good and bad. They mean adding something or removing something. Positive means that something is added. Negative means that something is removed. And reinforcement versus punishment describes whether a behavior is increased or decreased. Positive reinforcement means a behavior is followed by something the animal values, which increases the likelihood that that behavior will happen again. For example, if a horse touches a target and then is given a food reward, it is likely that that horse will go touch a target again. The reward strengthens the behavior. Negative reinforcement means a behavior results in the removal of a pressure or a discomfort, which increases the likelihood of that behavior happening again. This is one of the most common processes used in traditional horse training. For example, the rider applies leg pressure, the horse moves forward, the leg pressure is then removed. The release of the pressure reinforces the forward movement. Over time, the horse learns to respond more quickly and lightly to the cue. Positive punishment means something is added in order to reduce a behavior. For example, if a horse bites and receives a sharp correction during or immediately after, that correction is intended to reduce the biting behavior. However, punishment can sometimes create fear or confusion if it is not used in a timely manner, or if the horse does not understand which behavior is being discouraged. Negative punishment means something the animal wants is removed to reduce a behavior. For example, if a horse becomes pushy around food and the food is removed until the horse stands quietly, the horse may learn that a calm behavior allows the reward to return. One of the most important factors in operant conditioning is timing. Horses learn by connecting consequences to the behavior that immediately preceded them. If the timing is unclear, the horse may associate the consequence with the wrong behavior. This is why consistency and clarity are so important in training. When we look at training through the lens of learning theory, something interesting happens. Instead of labeling a behavior as good or bad, we start asking things like, what happened immediately before the behavior and what happened immediately after? What might the horse have learned from that experience? These questions help us become more thoughtful observers of the training process. Here we can demonstrate a simple example of operant conditioning. For instance, we might ask the horse to step forward from light pressure. The moment the horse steps forward, the pressure is released. Over time, the horse learns that moving forward leads to a relief from pressure. The clearer the timing of the release, the clearer the communication becomes. When trainers understand learning theory, it becomes easier to troubleshoot problems. Instead of guessing why a behavior is happening, we can analyze the training process. We can ask, what consequence might be reinforcing this behavior? Is the timing clear? Is the horse able to understand what is being asked? Learning theory doesn't tell us exactly what style of training to use, but it gives us a framework for understanding how animals learn, which helps us make better decisions for each individual horse.
So this week we're talking about operant conditioning as the mindfulness train goes by. And of the four quadrants, positive punishment, negative punishment, negative reinforcement, positive reinforcement, I've found that I probably use negative reinforcement the most with the horses, where I'm applying pressure and I release pressure the moment I get what I want. And that's something that I didn't necessarily know because I wasn't that aware of what I was doing or why I was doing it. And I should say, optimistically, I'm using negative reinforcement. I think sometimes I'm releasing pressure when I don't mean to. And recently I found an example riding where if I have my leg on Egypt to steer her, if she speeds up, I release that leg. So I'm trying to push her over. I'm trying to use negative reinforcement to push her over with the pressure of my leg. And then once she goes over, to release the pressure. And instead, what was happening, and I didn't even realize I was doing this, is I would go to push her over with my leg. Instead, she would speed up and I would release the pressure because I was scared. And I'm thinking, no, 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 I don't want you to speed up. But what in fact I'm doing is teaching her that even pressure with one leg, which I intend to mean move over, is actually speed up. I've now released the pressure because I'm frightened, because I don't want you to speed up. So I'm inadvertently training her that even single leg pressure means increased speed, even though my intention was not that. My intention was, I want to teach you to move over. Oh, no, 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 but that's not what I meant. So I was releasing pressure in the wrong moment. So that's an example of negative reinforcement that I was intending to use in one way, but ended up using in a totally different way. And I don't have a video example of that, and I think it'd be really hard to show. The amount of pressure I'm doing wouldn't be, I don't think, visible on a camera, but I thought that was really interesting. I also don't have an example of negative reinforcement to catch, to film, but there have been instances where Clover is a little too forward with the treats or too nosy or mouthy. He's never bit anybody or done anything naughty, but with the children, so then I have not included treats or hand feeding any type of like grain or hay or whatever at community building events. So in that way, it's a negative punishment where I've removed something that he really likes because things got a little, not that they were bad, but I felt like they were going to head in a direction that I wasn't going to like. So I took a pause on that. Positive punishment I have used when I've used more as a reaction. I see the horses do positive punishment with each other, more Egypt doing it to Clover. If he gets too close to her, she will strike at him. So she's adding something, she's striking at him to get him to move away. Usually before that happens, there's like a threat, but she'll strike at him. I have done that with the horses if there's something, I don't know, sometimes when I'm being impatient, if I'm leading them and they step ahead, I'll correct by doing a check on the lead, like pulling on the lead, if they get too far ahead of me. I have done positive punishment. I don't think they've ever bitten anybody, but sometimes if they're too forward, I'll do positive punishment of like, that's too close. That's hard to catch on video too because it's rare. It's just not, it's not in the normal day-to-day. Whoa! Oh! Okay, so we're going to do some positive punishment. I did 2 tugs. Brav! Now she gets this automatic positive reinforcement.
In this example, Liberty is receiving positive reinforcement. Come here. You might remember how I mentioned she can be hard to catch, which means she's not usually one to just walk up to people in the pasture. So I'm using the hand motion of come here and asking her to come, which is what I do with all the horses when I'm asking them to join me. In the round pen, she's alone and doesn't hesitate too much to walk up to me where she receives a treat. And she even stays focused on her task of coming to me after she has to stop and scratch her side. And then she breathes a sigh of contentment after getting that treat. In the pasture, you can see that she has Ranger and Freya around her, Freya is alpha to her and also loves treats. So I'm actually quite impressed that Liberty didn't back down as Freya tried to push her away. And once Liberty received that treat as a reward, she stays near, despite the others crowding her. Come here. Come on, Liberty. Good girl. Come on. Come here. Good girl. Good girl. Here you go. Here I'm having Zaina and Liberty demonstrate positive punishment towards their annoying pasture mate, Ranger, the only gelding. I had just let Zaina out into the pasture with the big horses, and she ran out to the loose hay where she loves to roll. Ranger comes over to her, and she is showing her submissive mouthing as she's sitting like a dog. But he bites her while she's sitting, and she gets up to run away and kicks him in the chest, creating space away from him and his antics. Liberty's showing a bonus video of positive punishment towards Ranger, which occurred while I was trying to film her positive reinforcement video. You can see she is almost like snaking her body around him, pinning her ears, and almost making contact with a bite as she drives him away from her space in the pasture. This spring, I've been letting Zaina out with the big horses in the pasture several times a week. Ranger, who is lowest in the pecking order, has been challenging Zaina in an effort to climb the social ladder whenever she's let out. You could see in this video how once Zaina is let out of her pen, Ranger runs after her in an attempt to bite her as much as he can. For her safety and well-being, I've been moving Ranger into a separate area, in this case, Zaina's pen, demonstrating negative punishment. Once Zaina has finished her zoomies and is content eating grass, I can let Ranger out and they seem to have a much more peaceful pasture partnership. In this video example, I'm using Zaina to demonstrate negative reinforcement. In the fall, I had worked with Zaina on yielding the hindquarters, but she's had some time off over the winter, and so she's a little bit rusty. I'm asking her to yield her hindquarters as I bend forward and lift the stick and point it towards her haunches and say, yes, over. Good girl. I ask her for this twice and immediately remove the stick from her once she's moved away. I'm reinforcing the behavior by removing the pressure of the stick and rewarding her actions verbally and with pets.
In the next episode, we're going to combine everything we've discussed so far. We'll look at how classical conditioning and operant conditioning work together in real training situations. Understanding how these two training systems interact can make training clearer, calmer, and more predictable for both the horse and the human. For now, the key takeaway is simple. Horses are always learning from the consequences of their actions. And when we understand how those consequences can shape behavior, we can begin to communicate in a way that is clearer and more consistent for the horse. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you in the next episode.